Dominic Reid trained as an architect, but is now Pageantmaster of the Lord Mayor's Show, which would have taken place next weekend if it wasn't for COVID-19. He took over the job from his architect father in 1992. He also runs a furniture company, John and Sylvia Reid, which sells his parents' mid-century modern designs. So, Dominic, can you first give me a brief history and a sort of raison d'etre of the Lord Mayor's Show?
Absolutely, rather magnificently. The Lord Mayor's Show is the continuation, the living tradition that dates right back to the Middle Ages and has its roots in King John's Charter to the citizens of London, which predated Magna Carta by a few months. So they were given the right to elect a mayor, but in order to make sure that the mayor wasn't in competition with the king, he had to go and swear an oath of fealty or allegiance, and that's what happened then. It's what happens now. In those days, clearly, it was a question of showing this individual to the people and to the sovereign, and so the Lord Mayor had to go and swear that oath, and that's what he does today. It's now enshrined in a new piece of legislation, relatively new. It's the City of London Various Powers Act of 1959, but the point is that it is still a legal requirement for him to do that. And even this year, without a show, William Russell, who has been appointed for a second year, or been elected for a second year, will go and renew that oath to the sovereign, and do it in person and do it on the second Saturday in November.
Very good. So what do you have to do as pageant master in a normal year?
In a normal year, my responsibility is running the show in its entirety. So that starts with getting organizations to want to participate, wooing them, bringing them on board, taking their fee from them because we are a self-funded event, and then gradually working with them on the designs of their floats, their participation, working with the BBC on how it's to be broadcast, working with the police and other authorities on security and everything that goes into a modern big mass participation event. So I'm responsible for the whole thing from beginning to end, and then I deliver it on the day, and then I go and have a quiet lie down.
So when your father took on the job, the event was pretty low key, but now it's grown into one of London's leading civic celebrations. So isn't architectural training a good grounding for this sort of event organisation?
I think it is. I really do think it is. I mean, I think an architectural training is a fantastic training. I have an uncommon kind of combination of training for someone of my generation, that I was a soldier and an architect, and there aren't very many of us about. But that was what my dad had done. His architectural training at the Regent Street Poly had been interrupted by the war, and he'd gone away and he'd done that, come back. And interestingly, he became Pageantmaster on the back of an exhibition that he designed, which was called The City for the Whole Man, which was an exhibition about the city and what it did, that was held at the Barbican in 1971. And that stemmed really from his early work on the Festival of Britain and the other design, exhibition design work that he'd done subsequently to that. And so it started as a design job. And yes, it's absolutely relevant to be an architect. I mean, if you're going to use public space, if you're going to use architecture and you're going to do something, in it, through it, with it, having an architectural training, of course, is a great advantage. So I've thoroughly enjoyed my time, because I've also had the opportunity to do some other amazing events. I've got to play with the Mall and have a procession running up and down there to and from Buckingham Palace. I've really had some fantastic times, and it is I think it's a very architectural job, actually. It's using the city in a specific way, whether you want to tie that to kind of, Russian constructivism and agitprop, or whether you want to think of yourself as a Renaissance kind of, Inigo Jones type figure, you can knock yourself out. But I think it is inherently architectural, absolutely.
So do you think the changes at Bank Junction, there is a fantastic painting, isn't there, of the Lord Mayor's Show coming through in front of Royal Exchange, and the pedestrianisation and the opening up of the front of Mansion House, will that change the way the procession comes through that very spectacular place?
I hope it won't. I mean, the painting you're referring to, William Logsdale's famous painting of November the 9th, which is a beautiful painting with a fantastic history, because all of those faces are people who were known and written about, and friends and colleagues of the painter. But it is a magnificent painting. Now, the thing you'll notice from that painting is that the Lord Mayor's coach is coming across the junction. It doesn't do that anymore. I was looking at a piece of Pathé News film this morning of 1945 when it still did that. And in fact, even when my father was doing it, it used to come down Threadneedle Street. Now, that road has been denied us for many years now, because you can't actually get up you can't get up Lothbury around the back of the Bank of England. So we've changed that route. We come down Princes Street. We use the end of Princes Street as a sort of a proscenium arch that brings the procession out into the public space in front of Manchester. Will it affect it? It shouldn't do. I mean, we've consulted quite carefully on that. It should create more public space for people to be able to stand and watch it. There are areas where the show has been constrained, and where it becomes more difficult. And there are pieces of, I think, ceremonial London where, I think it's a shame. I think, if we have the next major state procession from Buckingham Palace to St Paul's, the fact that we can't go down the centre of the Strand anymore because there's all of the traffic divisions and the central reservation stuff has been built. I think in a sense that's a pity, but I mean, it's a working city, isn't it? That's what we've got to do, and we've got to try and make the best use of it. Interestingly, as an architect, if you look at what people do on plan, it's not nearly as significant as what they do in section. It's the detailed section of how you create the junctions between pavement and road and all of that make it usable or not usable. It's nothing to do with where your outlines are. So actually, you can quite happily create big paved spaces with barriers and so forth that are removable, or you can have drop curbs, you can have all sorts of things that make it work. It's just a question of I think valuing what it is that you're trying to use the space for. I mean, so as again, an inherently architectural issue.
And one of your projects was the Invictus Games as well, wasn't it?
It is, yes. I am still the chief executive of the Invictus Games Foundation. So I was responsible for delivering that event initially in London in 2014, which was and the most extraordinary thing. Absolutely, we worked under colossal pressure to deliver an event like that in 9 months flat. But I've subsequently been responsible for taking it around the world, to Orlando, to Toronto, to Sydney, and now to The Hague. We had to delay it for a year in The Hague, which has been a lot of hard work and a great shame for the team out there. But we're hoping to deliver it in May next year. That's what we're working towards. So yeah, no, very exciting.
Now, your parents were important figures in the design world during the post-war period. So, can you tell me a bit about them, their work, and how you're keeping the furniture in production today?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were I think products of the age. They were both went to architectural school they went to Regent Street Poly, and they went there during the war. The war interrupted my father's education, so he was called up. He went away and served as a Green Howard for 3 years, and went abroad, and then came back and finished qualifying. My parents were interesting in as much as they met very young, they fell in love and got married, and that was a relationship that sustained them their whole lives. And as a design partnership, they're fascinating, because you can't distinguish the one from the other. I mean, if you look at Robin Day and Robin Lucien Day, or lots of Charles and Ray Eames, you can tell who's doing what. But with Mum and Dad, you really can't. And I thought that was quite interesting. So they set up down in Clapham in 1948. They got married and sort of established their design consultancy. Mum was working for Robin Day. Dad was doing some work for him and for Peter Morrow, who had taught him at the Poly. And then they got involved as youngsters, really, on the Festival of Britain, and I think that was a very formative thing. And throughout their working lives, they regarded the design of everything, a holistic approach to buildings, to furniture, to products, to everything. They did a bit of everything, and I think they made an interesting contribution. My work is really focused on their archive, their design legacy. I don't think, I mean, there isn't an extant monograph on them, and I think that's an oversight. I think it would be good. We had the first retrospective exhibition of their work was last November, a year ago from now, and And I think that was long overdue. I think they did make an interesting contribution, and I think they are a part of the canon of mid-century design. And certainly some of their furniture and their lighting fittings are the things that I think people find collectible and interesting. I think technologically, my father was quite clever. I mean, I think the Atlas fluorescent kitchen light, which was the first domestic fluorescent fitting that was made, was very, very cleverly conceived, because it used a standard 60-watt bulb in the place of what we now have as a starter switch. So it was technologically innovative, as well as being very, very minimal and rather a beautiful fitting. And 6 million of them were sold. So it was they did some good things, and they did quite a lot of graphic design as well, notably the NIC EIC logo that you see on every elections white van still to this day. There aren't many corporate logos that were designed in 1967 that haven't been altered since. So they did do some interesting stuff. What I've tried to do is bring back what we thought were probably the best of the best and the most interesting of the furniture, the S-range dining furniture, and put that back into production. And I've worked with Nick Radford to do that. Nick is the eldest son of Pat Radford, who owned Stag and ran Stag, who they originally commissioned those designs for, and so the two, if you like, the two eldest sons of the original collaborators have put that back together, and the quality of what has been produced, I must say, is outstanding, absolutely breathtaking. It's available online. It's available at 2021 and one or two other places. Not nearly as widely available as I'd like it to be, but I'm not a marketing man. I'm supposed by I suppose I'm a designer really at heart, but no, I mean, it is really good. It is really good stuff. So I would encourage all your viewers to go out and buy at least one sideboard and a table. The thing that I particularly like, actually, which I hadn't seen, because obviously I've grown up with all this furniture throughout my life, was there's a drop leaf table which is so utterly pared back and minimal and quite exquisite. I'd never seen one in reality until we reconstructed it from the drawings. And when we did, you just look at it and you think, actually, that's damn clever. You couldn't make a table with any less than that. I think it's very of the moment. I think it's very of the age. I think it speaks to what we all now feel. It's got to be, we've got to not overdo it. We've got to be careful and considerate with the resources of a finite planet. And that was very much, I think, their philosophy.
Very interesting. Well, Dominic Reid, thank you very much for your time. As an architect who trained as one but never really practiced it, it's fascinating to hear what other people do in related fields. So thank you very much indeed.
Great pleasure. Thank you.